evening, everybody. Welcome back to a public hearing on the 2016 millage rate. We had one of these discussions earlier today. So I will now open up the public meeting, and Tabitha, will you give us some opening comments?
Sure. Okay, I'm going to go through basically the same thing we went through at 1 o'clock for those that are at 2 o'clock for those that weren't here. And I've also got maybe a little better explanation for some of the items. Again, this is the surrounding counties' millage rates, excluding special districts, because they weren't included on the state's website where I pulled this information. I've sorted them from largest to smallest per the total, and you'll see where Paulding lies third from the bottom, so third from the smallest, with 2015 numbers. All of these are 2015 because not everyone has already adopted their 2016. They're not available yet. They're in the same process we are. Over the past few years, well, past 10 years to be exact, you can see what the, in blue, there is a tax levy, so property M&O only. This is what the tax levy was for the past 10 years, with 08 being a peak, and then it comes down and it kind of levels off. You get your tax levy by multiplying your digest value times your M&O. Times the millage rate, the millage rate for the M&O. At the bottom, you'll see a red line. That red line is the tax digest values, and you'll see how it increases, it kind of snakes, it goes up and then back down, and now it's beginning to go back up a little bit. And then the numbers are what the millage rate has done over time. So in 05, it was 6.5, 06, 6.8. Through in 2015, it was 6.528, and this has the 2016 as 6.188, and I don't know if it's 6.188 or the 6.5. This just puts the information that was given in the graph in columnar form, so in a table, and you'll see that the value of a meal is 3.7 million at the bottom, 2016, and option 1 and option 2 have the same value of a meal. You have different tax rates that equal a different levy for each. But the peak of this was in 09, in 08, when we were at 6.5 mils. The value was 4.5 million, and the total levy was 29.8 million. And this earlier we looked at some information that, we'll see how big this is. Make that a little bigger. I can't.
The view up at the top.
77.8%. Get rid of that.
Get Gary to help you.
Okay, let's try this and see if we can work with this. Basically, this breaks down the percentages. So, of each property tax parcels for real property, we sent out 63,691 notices. Of those notices, 46,034 had increases. Of that 4634, 23,947 were within 5%. You have 7,550 decreases to properties. So what this is going to do to an individual homeowner is different depending on what your assessment did. So to help demonstrate that, and we may have to go back to that one in a minute, I put together a spreadsheet. Can you see that, or do I need to make that a little bigger too?
fine.
Okay. This column for no change, we're gonna use that for the no change from last year to this year, as well as what it was last year. So if we had 10,107 parcels that had very little to no change. So if you had a $150,000 house, your 40% value would be $60,000, and your prior year taxes for M&O would have been $391.68. If we roll the millage rate back to 6.188, then your property taxes are going to go back to $371.28. If we don't roll it back and we keep it at 6.5, your property taxes are going to be at $390 estimated. I don't have, it does get confusing when you put exemptions in there. Everybody's different. Some are in covenants, some are not in covenants, and so I didn't want, I'm just doing kind of some scenarios. Okay, so if you had 7,500 of your parcels decreased in value, so I used 6% because most of that 7,500 was within 6%. Your value goes back to 141,000. Assessed value is 56.4. Your taxes go from 391.68 down to 349. If we roll it back to 6.188. If they stay at if we keep it at 6.5, your taxes go from 391.68 down to 366.60. That's if you had a decrease in your value. So 23,947 of these parcels actually increased within 5%. So it could be something a little bit less than this, but 1 or 2. But I used 5 for an example. So your property went from 150,000 to 159,000. Your assessed value is $63,600. Your last year taxes were $391.68, and with a value of 6.188 mils, your property taxes go to $393.56. Now the difference, the reason it doesn't do it exact, is $2, and it's because of rounding. It's because of fractions that I didn't include. If you go to 6.5, your taxes go from $391.68 to $413.40. Sorry. If your taxes increase by more than 5%, and the majority was within that the majority of the 22,000, was within the 5% to the 20%. So that's why I used the 20%. If it increased, it went from 150 to 180. Assessed value of 72, and so your taxes at 6.188. Your tax bill would go from $391.68 to $445.54. If you keep it at 6.5, your taxes would go from $391 to $468. I thought this was a better way of explaining it rather than taking the calculation and trying to, if you go to 6, then it increases. If you go down, that gets somewhat confusing.
Can I make a comment on it?
Sure.
Is that right? Okay.
Or if you have a question that helps explain, please ask.
Well, so in other words, if I'm reading it correctly, the first column, B, with the decrease, those people are going to get a decrease no matter which way we go.
That's correct.
Column C with no change, those people are going to get a decrease no matter which way we go, even though one decrease may be $2.
Yeah, roughly. Like I said, I left off fractions
That's
of
right,
cents.
but they're either going to get a small decrease or it's going to stay the same. When we get to column D, we're looking at basically it could stay the same roughly within a few bucks, or you could those people would actually could have an increase of $20, $22 is what they're looking at. And then in column E, you said that column would have been a 5 to a 20%, and so you figured it at 20. So in other words, you figured it high. And those folks, no matter what we do, there's going to be an increase. No matter what we do, no matter which one we go to. And if we go to the 6.5, the difference is going to be basically the same $22 difference.
That's right.
Between what we could do with the rollback or this. So in other words, no matter what scenario we go with, we figure it as a whole pie, but basically we got people that are going to be decreasing on either one. We got people that are going to stay the same on either one. And we got a few people that are going to go up on either one. And it's depending on that value of the house or the property, the value. In the real estate world, we've seen the same thing that James has done all over the county. When we look at assessments, we see some of them that have gone up in certain areas of the county, or even not even areas, certain subdivisions where they've gone up. Some have gone up more than others, and some have flattened out. We don't know what will happen next year, so that's that tells the story there. So I appreciate you doing that.
You're welcome. Any other comments, questions?
Thank you.
One of the things that I was asked for is the fund balance for the fire tax. As of June 30th, 2015, the audited number was $5.9 million. And I'm working on closing out 2016. We will have we will add to that number by about $1.5 million. Again, when you add firemen, and when you add new positions, which you're adding firemen each and every year, and you're adding fire stations, you're increasing the cost of that function. With your fire department and trying to reduce your ratings, you don't want to jeopardize the stability of your fire department, because you need to grow. You don't need to jeopardize that stability, so that's why it went from the 2 mils to the 3.1 mils. Was for a future, was to allow for some of that growth.
And we had a lot of discussions at that time. I know Tommy Graham and I did, when it came to that, because the voters had approved for us to have a fire tax that could go from 2 mils up to as many as 5 mils. And we looked at that, not only at the 3.1, we looked at a little lower, and we looked at a little higher. And we looked real hard at that. We were looking at, okay, we were trying to project, and it's hard to do, what's going to happen over the next few years with the market coming back and the home values coming back. And that's why we didn't go a little bit higher with it. We went with the 3.1. Would you mind putting back up that one screen on the value of a mill?
Sure.
Thank you. But the fire tax, when we went with that, and we voted on that, it was to not only take care of today, but to start moving towards the future, to get to hiring more firefighters and different things that we needed to do coming on down the road. And we said we would visit it again in a few years, and we would hope that that would be okay to stick with the 3.1 for several years and not have to deal with it every year. On the value of a mill, so our high was in 2008, and we levied $29,815,000.
Yes, sir.
And then in 2009, it went down just a little, so basically $1 million. And then 10 at 27 million, 11, 12 at 24, almost 25 million, 13 at 25 million. I remember the conversations in 13, and we talked about even though the market wasn't growing real fast, we talked about the new people moving into the community and the new homes that we had coming in. It was a slow go, not what we had in the beginning of 2000. But I remember before the new commissioners came in on post 3 and 4 that Tommy and I talked, and even Mr. Barnett, we talked about when we did the rollback in 13, and we were looking at 14, we mentioned, and we talked to you about we could not keep doing it. Somewhere along the line there was a cost to do a business, and that we had new people coming in the community, and we couldn't collect the same amount of taxes today, here we are in 2016, that we collected basically back in 05, 06 combination is where we would be going back to. We've come 10 years and we're collecting the same amount. And I don't know, James could probably correct me, but I think the last 8 years or so, we've got 3,800 new homes that we brought in roughly. Maybe off a little bit, but we're looking at 3,800 new homes. And even at the 6.5, if you took the average of 2005, 2006, we're below that. And so one of the things that got me interested in, hey, what can we do, was because when you look back all the way to 2005, the lowest mill rate was 6.5. And felt like we needed to at least look at something for not only this year. That $1.3 million difference that we're going to bring in does not fix everything we would all like to see fixed or head in that direction, because we've got other things that we need to do, but we're hoping that that'll help out in the next couple of years to come, because we talked to the department heads, we talked to the employees. We know there's a lot of things out there we need to address. Somebody's going to address them. We're going to have to, one way or another. And I completely understand that. So I think the value of a mill, this screen here is pretty important to see what we had collected and where we're at today. And I'm not looking at the 29, almost 30 million. I'm looking at before that. And then I'm putting in and take away the last 8 years of us putting in 3,800 new homes. It all means something. So thank you for the presentation that you've just given us.
Floor is open for anyone wishing to speak on the millage rate. Comments?
I'm just gonna have a couple of comments, and I'm going to go back to the fire tax, 3.1 mils. Maybe Tabitha can tell me what year that you raised the fire tax, if it was a mill and something. And I think it's been three or 4 years. And since that 3 or 4 year period, then when?
2012.
2012, 4 years. Since then, the amount of money that's being collected in that fund has went up. And talking with Tabitha before the meeting today, it looks like that the fire fund is 11.4 million and change. 468, I believe it was, 460 something. There's a balance today of almost 6 million, over half of what it takes to run that place there all for the whole year. That fund balance is sitting there. And I know that the law does not require you to roll back a fire tax levy. That's the exact reason that the fire tax levy was put in there, is because you don't have to have a public hearing on it every year. You can just, as long as y'all approve it, the fire department can say, I want it to be the 5 mills. And if it gets to 5 mills, they don't have to roll it back. If their revenue goes up and they're taking in 20 million, it don't have to go up. It don't have to come down. There's nothing that requires you to make it come down. We got $6 million sitting there, and y'all need $1.3 million to do what y'all need to do. Is anybody understanding what I'm saying? Why raise taxes? Why not cut the millage rate on the fire tax levy? Do they need half of what they run on every year as a reserve fund? Does the commission have half of what they run on every year as a reserve fund? It's not making no sense to me. Why we even have a fire tax levy was beyond me, because y'all probably have lost all control over controlling it. I don't know whether you have or not. But it's certainly worth a look at to see if $6 million is just laying there and y'all need $1.3 million of it. And that y'all can take that some way and do what you need to do on the problems that y'all see to raise, to get what you think is needed for this budget. And be able to keep your promises. Thank you.
Thank you, KB.
They went to sleep right there. All right, I wasn't for sure that I was going to speak today, but I just got a little bit more compelled to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of the Professional Firefighters of Paulding. Travis Boatwright, president of the Professional Firefighters of Paulding. I've actually learned a little bit just in the short amount of time that I've been here today. I knew we probably had a surplus in the fire tax, but I didn't realize we had that much surplus in the fire tax. That being said, I got a couple of pieces of paper, and the reason I sort of thought about speaking today, I was actually going to speak on behalf of my brothers and sisters in blue, as far as the budget without rolling back the millage rate. They're basically in the same situation we are. They're losing good quality folks to other places. In the last 8 years, during the recession, understandably, we've probably had, I would say at the most, a 5% raise over that whole 8 years. Used to, we would get 2% cost of living raise, and then up to, I think, another 3%. for a merit raise. And I'll pass these down through here. One's from 2010, roster for the fire department. One's from 2006. All the red lines are people that we've lost. And the reason we've lost those folks is because they went elsewhere, like I said, for more pay, better benefits, better retirement. Me and Mr. Collette and Sheriff Gulledge was talking when I come in. When I'm eligible to retire with Paulding County at age 65, I'll have 42 years of service. 42 years of service in public safety takes a toll on your body. So if we have a surplus, and we've been sitting on that surplus, and we're losing quality folks, it makes sense to me to give our folks raises and look at a earlier retirement age. I know it's gonna cost money, but if we got a surplus, I mean, I could just, like I said, since I come in, I had no idea that we had that surplus. We have a grant, $1 million grant for a ladder truck, which, hey, was great, because we needed one, and I'm glad we got the grant. A lot of people worked hard for that. But we're actually in need of 2 ladder trucks right now. So I could spend $1 million of that, $6 million right there. So, basically, I think that's all I got to say. It just, like I said, I wasn't for sure if I was going to speak, but I felt a little bit more compelled as the meeting went on. I do think public safety is very important in Paulding County. Obviously, it's beginning to be more important as our world changes. I understand Mr. Coggins about the taxes, but you don't want to be taken away from services that you need the money to go elsewhere to continue to serve Paulding County citizens. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Travis, what is our highest structure in the county?
Be the hospital,
What's next, do you know?
courthouse.
You were talking about ladder trucks. Normally, this is where they would come into play. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. When the hospital was built, or well, still as it is right now, we don't have a ladder truck tall enough. The ladder truck that we have, I think it's going on 10 years old, and it's a 75-footer.
Right now, the truck we have will not.
No, sir. The one that we have spec'd for the grant is a 105-foot platform. The one we have now is a 75. It's been, matter of fact, I think it's out of service right now. I know last shift it was out of service. It stays out of service more than it is in service because of its age. From what I understand, the way the grant was actually wrote, it was wrote as this tower ladder is a platform. It's like the one we have now is just a 75-foot ladder. The one that we have spec for the grant is a ladder with a platform up top. A little bit safer operations. But from what I understand, that was wrote as a replacement for aging equipment. So that being said, if this new ladder truck that's going to be, and we got 12 months to bid it, spec, purchase it, with this $9.something million, I'm sorry, $900-something thousand grant. So once we get that, that other truck will probably go as a reserve, I would think, as far as the way the grant's wrote. So that being said, we obviously need to be looking at a second one. And probably get rid of a horse truck also. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Travis.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the millage rate?
I may be wrong, but I think some of what Mr. Coggins was saying or meaning, and I may, if I'm wrong, just point it out that I'm wrong, Mr. Coggins. But I think what he was saying is we have this money in the fund balance on the fire tax, and we could trim that millage rate and then do what we needed to with this millage rate that we're talking about, and then that would balance out as far as, so he's really not saying, because we can't take from that account, but he's really not saying go get $1.3 million from that account and use it. I think what his intention was is trim that down.
Exactly right.
Okay.
I don't see why it can't be that.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I appreciate those comments. I just wanted to make that clear because he wasn't saying let's take from one to do the other. But anyway, and we should have already had a fire station out 278 West already anyway. Should have been done, and because of some other things going on, it's not done, and that's something that we need to focus on getting done. And of course, that would take some more employees, and we've got some, but the fire tax, when we did adjust it, it was so that we could get ready for what should be happening right now that's not happening on that new firehouse and a few others coming. So I was looking back at some emails that we worked on that fire tax and talked about that back in 2011. Tommy Graham and I, as Travis and KV were talking, I looked back at those to see, and the projections that we had back then of where we would be without raising that and where we're at now, we were pretty much on track. With the shortcoming of, I wish we had a couple firehouses built, at least one. So, I understand, Mr. Coggins.
Can I add one additional thing?
Love
Just
to.
for the explanation of the fund balance, and nobody walks out here with misleading information.
Right.
Your fire tax is funded nearly 99% on property taxes. So those do not come in until October. Therefore, your fund balance percentage is more important here than it is honestly in your general fund, because you don't have any other sources of revenue. So if we're going to be able to pay those firefighters in the month of August before those taxes start coming in, you have to have some amount of fund balance. Really, you need about 45%, because you need to get through October for those taxes to come in at 95%, and then for the tax commissioner to process those and then get those to the county. Otherwise, I've either got to borrow from the general fund if that's available, or I've got to borrow from the bank and pay interest on payroll. So it's not like you've just got $5.9 million sitting in reserves. Those reserves were actually built early on. As the fire tax first started, they were built in so that you would be able to, the fire tax would be able to hold its own and not have to borrow from another fund or borrow to make payroll, because firefighters won't pay in August and September. They don't, not really interested in waiting until November for a check.
Well, you're right. We had a spreadsheet that we looked at back in 2012, July 5th of 2012, where we knew if we didn't make any changes that we would be looking at right here today somewhere about $3 million in the fund balance. And when we started that back in 12, we were roughly 5.4 million, I believe. And I may have some of those figures wrong, so don't hold me too tight around the neck on it. But according to what I pulled up here from July 5th of 2012, and Tommy Graham and David Barnett and myself worked on that, we did that so that we could get that fund balance, to keep that fund balance up where it needed to be. And there may be a little extra in it right now, but anyway, I think we've said enough on it. I think I've got everybody's views, and I do appreciate it more than you know. Bring up some good points, Mr. Coggins.
You will speak again.
I don't think that the fire tax thing has any more need for a balance like that than they do. They're not, I don't know what the total budget is, but I don't think that they're carrying that much. Going back to what Todd said, back when this was raised, they were gonna give the firemen a raise, which they did. They were gonna add additional firemen, which they did. And now that it takes, if I understand it right, a little over 11 million budget, and they're collecting that, or they're collecting that much. And they have a $6 million balance. What the man was talking about a while ago, I don't know why anyone didn't answer that. We got plenty of money in Splosh to buy the fire truck that the guy needs. Right? We ain't got $1 million in there to buy the guy a fire truck there to go out to the hospital. Sure we do. We spend it on a lot of other things. I'm just totally confused, I guess, that why we got a $11 million budget and over half of it has to be in reserve. You're talking about, when does that fiscal year start?
The fiscal year starts July 1.
July,
Mhm.
August, September, October, November, 4 months.
That's right.
The whole budget is 11.
So what's that percentage? 4 months out of 12 is what percent?
That is what percent?
What percent?
Yeah. That's
4
not
months
pushing,
is
that's not
30.
pushing the envelope there, in my opinion. It's not pushing the envelope. I'm not trying to take anything away from it. I would stand here today and say, give them a 3% raise, give everybody a 3% raise, and I have no problem paying for that, none. But this other, to just raise the taxes for some of these other things there, and have money left there, laying on the table, I think it's ridiculous that we even think about that.
Anyone else want to speak?
You probably knew I couldn't be quiet this whole time, right? Okay. So every time I come to a commissioner meeting, I see a lot of dollar signs. It's always dollar signs. And telling people they're doing a great job. So what I want to say to start is you all are doing a great job. I don't want to be back there trying to do all these dollar signs. Thank you, Tabitha. The second thing I want to say is when I was a kid, we played Sim City. I don't know if you guys remember that. It's probably an old school game, isn't it? Like from the 80s or something. But in order to have a happy city, you had to have police, you had to have fire, you had to have a jail, you had to have a power plant, and I think you had to keep your people from rioting. So far we're doing good, right? Except for the power plant. But we've got police, we have fire, and, you know, we have no riots at the moment. So that's good. What I wanted to do is just briefly, I have a little bit of insight on the frustration that you guys are facing trying to give raises to our public safety officers. I get it. I can see these dollar signs, and I can say, I wish I had that much money, but then I know that much money doesn't spread very far when you're talking about an entire county's worth of public safety. I think it needs to be a priority. I feel Travis's pain. When you go through the training of a firefighter, that's not cheap, is it, Travis? Or when you go through the training of a police officer, and we're losing them to Cobb, we're losing them to Fulton, we're losing them to Alabama. there's an issue there. I have watched millions and millions of dollars get wasted here. I stood up here I don't know how many times and called you out on millions and millions of wasted dollars. And the firefighters haven't had a raise in how long? Tabitha, do you know? An actual raise. That face right there tells me that there's an issue. If we can't remember the last time that the firefighters got a raise, that's sad. 2 years ago? 4 years ago? 6 years ago?
No.
Last year?
Not long. Their raises have come consistently with the county raises. So there was a period of time when public safety outside of fire, they did get raises. So your officers, your mandated officers, then, and they held some of their positions to be able to do so. Long story, but kind of complicated. Last year, the year before?
Year before? Okay. So the year, Pat, was it, you said the year before? Yeah. So, not to be a pain, but these guys have put themselves in harm's way a lot lately. We've had enough SWAT team issues and police issues and fires and all that kind of stuff. I think we need to consider finding some way to commend these guys other than letting them stand up here and get their picture with all your pretty faces. I just do. If there's money in our budget to do pie in the sky projects, but we can't find money in the budget to pay our public safety or to put in water lines or to do the things that we need to do to keep our Sim City happy, then there's a problem with that. I have no problem with a higher mill rate if the money goes where it should go. And it's holding those dollar signs accountable that I'm worried about. So I won't take up any more time because quite frankly I could use some bacon and I'm hungry. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Just remember who it is that's really the backbone of the county. We elect the officials to come and to make those decisions for us, but we have to trust what you guys are doing. So, sorry, Gary and Travis, but I just felt like I had to say at least something for you guys. Also, I'm for the new jail, so just so you know, that's how I'll vote on that. It needs to happen. I agree. And that's it. So,
Thank you, Christian.
the end.
Thank you. Thank you. Just so people understand, we work very closely with the fire chief and the deputy chief. We work very closely with the fire advisory board. They try to give us indication, the pulse of where we need to be and what we're doing. We take direction from the sheriff's office, from our sheriff. We work very closely with them and look at their needs and what we can afford to do. So none of us up here are against raises, or none of us up here not wanting to give you equipment. But we've seen other counties have catastrophes and they couldn't fix their infrastructure. Been through something. So, if your fire chief brings us direction and the fire board says this is what we need to do. Gentlemen, we do have two openings on the fire advisory board. We need to get those people. That needs to happen. But again, we take direction from the leaders of that section. When the sheriff came to me and he said, this is what I need, I said, well, do you need more? Do you need a new jail? Where do we go? Last year's budget had a 3% raise and no buyback. And we did an amended budget and put buyback in it. This year, we had buyback and we didn't have raises in it. So, this is a difficult position for us to sit in, but nobody's against giving you guys raises.
No, sir. And, excuse me. when I decided to speak, like I said, I was mainly going to speak on behalf because I knew, I had looked at the proposed budget without the rollback with the sheriff's, the shift differential and the hazard pay. Definitely, I think, I support them. I know, I was out on the SWAT call. I swear, I felt like I was in a movie because I've been in public safety for 25 years and I've never seen the stuff that I saw that day. Gary's probably the same way. When you see a...
That's why he wants to be fire chief.
When you see well, Gary's out there directing traffic. When you
Yeah,
see,
right.
when you see a armored SWAT vehicle jump across the intersection with a person they had to extricate out of a backyard of a active scene and a helicopter standing by there to fly possibly 2 patients out, one was deceased. It's it definitely, like I said, the world's changing. And no, I'm not disrespecting anybody on the board. I know y'all work hard. And I know Chief Pelfrey, he puts together budget. He's done great since he's been fire chief. And I just want to make that clear. I'm not trying to step on any toes, but my thing is basically since the fire chief is not here, and we was talking about trying to roll back the millage rate, I just wanted to stress that the money, I understand we have a surplus, and I believe we collected a year before we got off the general fund onto the fire tax. That's probably where that surplus come from. Am I correct on that? No.
No, but it was early on. But
Okay. So, we that's where we did get that surplus. But to consider trying to roll back, luckily when y'all did increase it, we didn't have to lay folks off. Other departments were having to lay people off. That was the purpose of raising it. So I'd hate to see us decrease that when we still have a lot of needs for Paulding County as our population grows, as the world keeps getting crazier. I'll leave this with you too. This is actually May of this year roster. And just basically to reiterate our needs, we still have stations with 2 people in them. NFPA standards says 4 for safe operations. Because when you have a house fire, you have 2 people in, you're supposed to have 2 people out to be able to rescue those 2 people in. So these outlying stations can't properly operate because they have some time delay. If there's 2 people out in Union, they're having to wait on a backup station to be able to do their procedures properly. And then the other thing is these people out in Union are paying just as much taxes as my folks down in Hiram, where I have 4 guys at my station. So, like I said, I just want to stress that, I don't think it's an option to be able to roll the fire department millage rate back because we still have a lot of needs. And taking care of our folks and trying to keep, we have a major retention problem. And I don't have the figures, me and Gary was talking, it does take a lot to train people. And basically we are a training ground for other departments. It is a lot of money. I can't give you a dollar figure, but I promise you I will figure or find one out for you.
They can get it wrong, right? Thank you.
Does that mean, can I stop talking?
Travis, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think we just made clear what Mr. Coggins was saying, but I don't think any of us are cutting that fire tax. I think we got some things to look at, and I think some of it's been in the works. So I will say this, I know we're going to finish up, but again, had a lot of, I don't mean this statement to be anybody to take that, I take it lightly. We've had a lot of discussion over a 20-something million dollar part of the budget. We're talking about a $1.2 million, and we just went over and talked and seen where the increases were and who was going to get an increase and who wasn't going to get an increase in taxes if that was the case. So I don't take it lightly at all. but I want the citizens to understand, for me, it's not just about this year. It's about moving forward, it's about the future, it's about doing what we need to do to get us in the right position, to get us to get us back to where we were 10 years ago with the 3,800 new citizens, new homes that we have not citizens, but new homes that we have in the community. And so it's not just about, we talk about raises and we talk about other things. And this morning it was mentioned about the salary study. And I said, we've talked about that, it's been in the budget, hasn't been done, and it's something that we need to do. But if we don't fix this issue here, we can't do anything with the study that we get back that we haven't worked on yet to get, and it needs to happen. That study needs to happen. And we need to do that before we can look at where we need to, what direction we need to go in next year and the following year. And this is just a stepping stone to that. And I think the presentation that Tabitha gave to us earlier, when you look at the dollars collected and you look at the mill rate and you go back 10 or 12 years, basically says it all. So I appreciate it.
And I'd like to add one thing real quick too, is I'd like to remind everybody, it's not just about that budget part, because my goal is to increase the homestead exemption to $4,000. That will help take the burden off of the homeowners and put it on the investors and businesses like other counties. That's going to put money back in your pocket. If we go for a $4,000 homestead exemption and it takes next year, we can roll it back to 2.5. The next year, we can roll it back to 2.5. And everybody's getting a $4,000 exemption in that third year.
And that was something else that I'm going to send y'all some information, each of the commissioners. But that was something else that we talked about in 2013 and 2014, and I'll share some information. We talked about the expansion of homestead exemption, and I've got some paperwork here that I'll send to y'all that we talked about on November 24th, 2014, where we wanted to do something about it in December. So here it is, 2016, almost 2 years later. So if you don't have the discussion out here in the open, you can't get things done. So I appreciate it. But I'm going to send y'all this, because as we're going through the fire tax conversation and different things, I just showed Ron a homestead exemption expansion that we worked on, Tommy Green. So thank you.
I will now close this public hearing. And we'll have ourselves adjourned, and we will start our 7 o'clock meeting.
Make a motion.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have about 5 minutes before we start the 7 o'clock meeting.